right. I've talked about Shakespeare and the impact of Shakespeare before on this show, and some of you poke fun at me, and others say, "Who art thou?" And you confuse a lot of the different moments, I think, in Shakespeare's works. This is why I love our next guest. His name is Eric Richardson, and he's here on Author's Corner with Seeing Shakespeare, Hamlet, an analysis of Shakespeare's greatest play. You will understand it, my friends, if you read this. And especially, I know I have a lot of teachers listening, and this is perfect for any class because you really walk away with a completely different understanding. Eric, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Kay. It's good to be here.
What made you write this in the first place? Tell us your background because you have the teaching background.
Right. Well, I taught in Virginia in public schools for 30 years. I taught AP Lit, which means I taught Hamlet for 20 years. And then when I retired from Fairfax County, we moved to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where my wife grew up and her parents are still here. And I worked two more years in a high school here, and then decided to retire, although I'm substitute teaching as well. But I really missed being in the classroom. I missed having those conversations about literature. And I just got the idea in my head initially that I would maybe have a YouTube channel explaining Shakespeare and particularly Hamlet. And then I realized that my channel or my episodes were going to be way too long for your average audience. So my wife recommended I write a book, and so that's what I did.
And I love what you say right in the very beginning, too. You say seeing Hamlet, Act One, Scene One, introduction. And when you read this, you really set it up so well. You say, of course, reading Shakespeare is initially challenging. However, with a little practice and patience, you'll find the language quite accessible. What drew you to this in the first place, besides being a teacher? Because this was a choice you made.
Right. I missed teaching Hamlet, and I missed teaching Shakespeare. Um, you know, quite a bit more than I guess I thought. And I knew through Facebook and some other channels, I was seeing all the time that new teachers and young teachers were asking for advice. I have to teach Hamlet. I've never taught Hamlet. What do I do? And so I thought there was definitely an audience out there for me that I could help and make the teachers see that it wouldn't be as difficult as they thought. They just needed a little bit of practice, a little bit of guidance. And I thought back in my career, I had to do all that research myself. So wouldn't it be nice if a new teacher could just open a book and all the information be there already?
What's the hardest thing about understanding Hamlet, do you think?
I think it's the complexity because the average modern audience or reader can't quite understand why Hamlet is having such a difficult time doing what he believes he should do, which is avenge his father's death. So he thinks he knows who killed his father, and that is his uncle, but he's being pulled in so many different directions. So because he is Christian, and Christianity says thou shalt not kill, and God says only I am allowed to take revenge. But revenge was still a pretty prominent cultural aspect in Shakespeare's Elizabethan England. Um, Hamlet is also torn religiously because what many people don't realize is that the ghost, when he talks to Hamlet, reveals that he's Catholic because he says, "I'm burning. I'm paying for my sins." But Hamlet is Protestant, and we know that because he's been studying at Wittenberg, and so he immediately doesn't know whether or not he can trust the ghost. The ghost looks like his father and sounds like his father, but the ghost claims to be in purgatory, and the ghost demands that Hamlet get revenge. But if a soul is in purgatory, he must renounce all sin, and he can't ask somebody to commit further sin. So those are some of the things that are just really tearing Hamlet apart because he doesn't know what to do. Whatever he does, pardon my language, damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. And so I try to help readers understand those complexities that Hamlet has to deal with.
And I said this, when you talk about an analysis, which is what the book is of Shakespeare's greatest play, you go scene by scene and you do what you were just doing there, whether it's historic, cultural, political, religious, what that all entailed in really Shakespeare's biggest or most important play is a better way to say that, but also the vocabulary, which I think is so fascinating. Because often for students, I think they don't want to really, they want to know, but they don't want to seem like a dummy, like, oh,
Right.
I should know this, right? And you
Sure.
break it down, and you break that language down, and it had to be, you taught it for so long, and it had to be something that you grasped from the beginning. I like the language. Do you like the language?
I love the language,
Yeah.
but I also recall my own struggles, not just in reading Shakespeare initially, but in trying to explain it to my students. And I think part of the problem is that students come into the class and they approach Shakespeare thinking that he spoke Old English or Middle English, and he doesn't. Shakespeare basically invented our language, and it's modern English, but there are just so many words that don't have the same meaning they do now, or words that we're not familiar with. Um, and so that makes it difficult for them. And I think generally people are intimidated by poetry anyway. So to read a a play that on average takes 3 hours to read in with vocabulary that you're not used to, that's intimidating for sure.
It is intimidating, but the importance of Shakespeare, Hamlet especially, why is it important for everybody listening? Why is it important to understand Shakespeare?
Um, One of my favorite writers, Flannery O'Connor, I think defined it best, the difference between a good book and great literature. So she says a good book is topical. Whatever the topic is, you're going to find really good books. So right now, for example, transgenderism is a big topic right now. But Flannery O'Connor would say 10 years from now, nobody's going to be talking about that. But great literature is about human nature, which never changes and never ceases to confound us. Our ability or proclivity to do things that we know we shouldn't do or that are going to cause us great pain, but on the other hand, do things that may cause us pain but are going to help somebody else. It's we're a strange species in that sense, and that's the greatness of Shakespeare and so many other writers is that they write about human nature, which makes their works um, last forever.
Yeah, and you really said it there and you've weaved it in the conversation, but what do you hope anybody takes away from reading this? Because of course teachers, this is perfect for them, students, but I would say that anybody interested in Shakespeare and Hamlet, especially Hamlet, this is a perfect book to read so that you even understand better what it is that you are looking at when you go through Hamlet. What is it you hope the takeaway is?
I hope the takeaway is that with a little practice, Shakespeare is not that difficult, and I hope people just understand that that they can approach his plays at their own pace. They don't have to rush through. They don't have to understand everything. I discovered new things this time in rereading the play that I hadn't seen in the previous 20 years. And that's the richness of Shakespeare and so many other classical writers that you can keep going back to them and they reveal more and more to us. But to stick with it, and you'll handle Shakespeare quite well sooner than you think.
I love that sooner than you think. You can get this book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Eric, will you do another one?
I'm hopefully going to work on King Lear and get that produced. I don't know the play King Lear as well as I know Hamlet, but that and there's a couple others that I truly love that I hope to write about as well.
All right, we look forward to that. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Kate. It's great talking to you.
You too.
Visit us at www.greatwritersmedia.com. Email us at info@greatwritersmedia.com or call us at +1 877 556